proposing to start. We're proposing to start the work session for our organizational matters with non-arranged participation. But Carol, just if you would, please make note. Looks like everybody is here.
I don't see Paul yet. Did you?
Am I missing Paul? Okay.
Unless I missed it.
I don't see him either.
Okay. Okay, is there anyone participating or here today on the Zoom meeting that wants to speak under non-arranged participation? I'm not seeing anybody raising their hand. If you're calling in, you can dial *9. I don't think anybody's called in, so. Okay, we'll move on to number 2, which is our organizational matters. We typically do the organizational matters workshop within a week or 2 or so of an election, or anytime there's a changeover in council. In this case, we recently appointed Sanam to fill the vacancy by Julie Knight. Hey, welcome, Paul.
Welcome.
We're just getting started, so you didn't miss anything.
Okay. The computer's
Oh,
not working right. I wanted to, so I'm on my cell phone looking at you.
Okay,
My granddaughter, the expert's here though, trying to hit it with a hammer.
all right. Well, we can see you just fine, sir.
All right, good.
So we have in our packet today the prior resolution for the purpose of establishing organizational matters for our council. And I thought maybe we just, hopefully everybody's had a chance to read through it. The goals would be to, 1, fill the vacant positions or reassign the vacant positions, if you will, that were vacated by Julie. They don't automatically have to go to Sanam. But I thought we could talk a little bit about how to get her involved, and maybe she could express some interest in where she might want to participate. And then the second part of that, there's no action tonight, but the second part of that is that we put this on a future agenda to officially adopt once we sort of agree in principle, if you will, where we all want to be. So Sanam, have you had a chance to review the document at all?
I have. Yes, thank you.
Do you have any areas?
Yeah, I don't have a strong
They supposed to, you want me to bring that up?
place,
They're in here now?
a strong opinion on which thing to participate. As you all know, I've been on ACH for many years, but I'm also very interested to look at other opportunities and get involved in areas that I have not. So if there is a committee or commission or group that somebody is also like want to switch or swap and change, I'm willing to participate in those, or pick what is left from Julie.
Okay. Well, most of us have been in some of these roles now, just 6 months or so since last election, some longer, I guess. Let's just talk a little bit about the vacant ones from Julie. As we go down the list, Julie was the alternate on the Cap Dart committee. She was our representative for Dexter Days. Proceeding down, she was on our Street, Sidewalk, and Alley Committee, as well as our Utilities Committee. Do any of those areas interest you, Sanam?
Yes, I would say that both the CAPG and Dexter Days, I would say, are more interesting to me.
Okay.
Can I ask a question about how the Dexter Days representative to the Dexter Days thing came about?
Sure.
I guess just because I don't know, maybe I feel like it's an interesting relationship between the city and that committee. And I think sometimes there's a perception of members in the public that Dexter Days has something to do with the city or is in some way sponsored by the city, but then my understanding is it isn't necessarily, it's just that they're another organization in the community. So I guess I'm just trying to understand how it came to be that there was do the others, like just surrounding townships, do they have reps from their townships on their committee? Is that, or are there other similar organizations on our list here that are like a Dexter Days? And we also provide a liaison to them?
Yeah, Jamie, it's a good question. For as long as I can remember, there's been a representative to the Dexter Days Committee. I can't tell you when it got started. But it was meant to help create communication between the two groups. I don't believe there are designated township representatives to that group. Maybe Paul or Donna, one of the longer standing folks, knows the answer. Or Carol or somebody.
Well, I'm glad you asked, Jamie. It's
Yeah.
because it really could, in my opinion, we could benefit from having better definition of what it is. But I think it's probably been designed, as Sean said, for communication. Do you agree with that, Paul? It was to try to
I
get,
do, yep.
but it is, I don't know what makes the Dexter Days Committee official. I don't know if they're a separate body. I don't know if they have incorporation papers. I'm not sure exactly what it is. So we are not responsible for having Dexter Days, nor do we sponsor it. However, we've always said we cooperate by removing trash, closing streets, and supplying support the way we always have. So I don't know if that helps you to understand. It's not clear to me as to exactly what it is.
I agree that everything that Donna said is correct, but also with the addition of when it was first formed, with basically the fire department and some of their personnel. And then it got bigger, and the fire department then gave money back to the city to put up Christmas tree decorations and lights. And then it got to a point to where we had no accountability of anything of their money. They just spent it where they wanted to, and we didn't have any control over that. We thought we should at least know what that money is spent for as a relationship that we have with them. And as I understood it for a long time, we got nothing from them at all. They would refuse to give it to us. And that goes way back, but I think we decided we were going to have some kind of a connection with them. And that was to have an appointee there on that board. And so I guess that's what, I can't remember how that actually happened, but I remember the money issue was a strong issue with that. Do you agree, Donna, with that part of it?
I agree. Yes. And like I said, I don't know exactly who, if there is a treasurer of that group or what their goals are, or their definition of their purpose, their mission statement. I don't know anything about that piece of it.
I believe for a long time there was an association between Dexter Days and the Dexter Chamber, and then a few years ago, the Dexter Days committee indicated that it wanted to become a fully separate entity from the chamber, and there was some public communication about that.
Justin, are they incorporated then as a nonprofit?
That's my understanding. I don't know that we have checked this year their 501c3 status.
Does that ever come in when they apply for some of the activities that they want to sponsor?
So Michelle is shaking her head. I know that she had looked into it.
Trying to find that out.
They've gotten their paperwork in through the state, but the last time we had checked, we had not seen anything through the federal. I know that it gets asked every time, but I have not seen it with the application. So it's at this point, because they do have nonprofit status through the state, that's been, as far as I know, viewed as being sufficient.
I don't think they can get insurance if they don't have something like that. I'm not sure what they have, but I'm not sure that they could get insure that event without having some kind of legal status. We probably should check on it is what we probably should do.
They do provide insurance, and it does name the city as an additional insured, as is required. But I understand the point you're making.
And
And we can,
themselves, are they insured or are they, or does somebody else say, oh, well, we'll insure you for that weekend and, you know, so your insurance will be under us, but Dexter, it's not really under the Dexter Days Committee.
it's under the Dexter Days organization. It's Dexter Days, not an individual person,
Mhm.
not an individual
But I mean, is
person.
it like under the chamber or somebody else that?
No, they're completely separate from the
Themselves,
chamber now.
Okay. I think
I just wanted to make sure that there was still a perceived benefit to having a representative, and it seems like there is, if the intent is to maintain communication.
Well, and one thing that we've talked about internally is sitting down with the Dexter Days Committee early next year.
Mhm.
Myself, Kurt, and some folks from our DPW sit down with them and kind of go through everything that they're planning and most importantly, what they need from us, you know, as far as road closures, event boxes, so on and so forth.
Okay. Thanks. Sorry for the diversion.
No, it's all good. It's a good question. You know, Jamie, I think one of the things that we were trying to do or maybe head off is if there was a new idea, rather than rather than reading about it in the application when they're under a deadline for approval. If they were thinking about trying a new idea, maybe floating the idea through the representative back to council so we could kind of give feedback on whether we understood it, liked it, didn't like it, you know, or what the things might be. Like, for example, at one point in time, the whole fireworks thing was a new idea. And they wanted to shoot them off from the new park. And we were like, well, we don't want all the debris in the park.
Mhm.
You know, that kind of thing. And it kind of took us by surprise, or it was, I don't know if it took us by surprise, but it was kind of a new thing to get our arms around. There's been talk of, you know, do they want to close down Main Street? You know, when some of those ideas first hit the packet without any thought or time to think about them, or only a couple days to think about them, it made it more difficult, or it makes it more difficult sometimes to react to those kinds of questions, I think. So the idea was to have somebody communicating with them. Now,
Okay.
without Julie in that role, and actually this year when we tried to communicate back to them after, you know, back in February, I don't know how well that actually worked. They were not really on receive very much at that time. If I can say that gently, I know WA had offered to help Julie with some things, and I think they gave some feedback to them, but it wasn't really a two-way conversation at the time. So
Mhm.
maybe we need to, when Justin and staff and everybody else meets with them, maybe whoever our rep is could, you know, express that we do want to have a dialogue so we can help not look like we're impeding the process every time we ask a question about something that, you know, might be the first time we hear it or see it.
Sounds good.
And I think the answer is no, we don't have another event like that we have a designated person assigned to, at least that I can think of.
I know that the Rotary participates in the Memorial Day Parade, and we have that activity that we sponsor now, and when the other group left it, when we also participate in Dexter Days with our booth that we sell tickets for our playhouse. The other thing about the committee this year is that it seemed to me like they wanted to do what they wanted to do, but they didn't really want to do what we wanted to do as far as the money and the issues there. It's my understanding they are a new corporation. They have done that, but there was also some clauses that they had to fulfill about financial stuff that never really passed muster to complete everything. So maybe that's what Michelle was talking about, but that's kind of how it started back with the firemen. They had control of the money and that, and then they felt that there was a need for more control by the city council of what they did, and how much money they had and where it went. People in charge of the collecting the money at the beer tent would just come in and periodically and grab a bunch of bills and leave a few there to continue the business of selling beer. But then the money would go and there was nobody standing there watching the money, who took what, anything about that. And that disturbed some of us at that time, okay? That was back in the 2000s. So it's kind of been an evolution of concern with the city council. All the city council that I would have been on always had a concern about where the money went and who had control of it. And we never got anything, including, the last 2 years where the state didn't even get anything. They never got any control of that because they just operated without doing what they were supposed to do under the rules of the state. So that's where the concern for me still is. I still think that they need to be audited. They need to be sure that they give us the right information and what the money is, and because it is unique, it's the only one, like you said, Sean. Lions doesn't have that. Rotary doesn't have that. Because we don't sell and raise the money in one fell swoop, and it's just always felt loose to me. I don't know if anybody else has anything there. Donna's probably the oldest one on the council that would know anything about that, but as I remember, it started with the fire department, and then it got into a Dexter Days committee, which then evolved into what we have today.
It used to be Paul garage sale or street sales by the merchant is where it really started about 50 years ago or more. 60, probably 70 years ago, I would guess. And then it started adding little bits and pieces of entertainment to it. And that made
Yamada's right hand got in.
I missed whatever that was, but
Okay.
I couldn't understand what that was. But anyway, it kind of then just began to grow. But I always thought that when the first major growth came, it was with, they were under the chamber, as Paul said. And then I know there was a split, but I don't know any detail to that.
Actually, the chamber evolved from the Dexter Days Committee, the chamber as we have
Okay.
now.
Okay.
The Dexter Days committee wasn't, operating anyhow, but, and not on as big a scale as it is now. So that was one change. And then they moved together with the Dexter Days Committee and the chamber and some of the other activities. That we did.
Thanks, Carol. That's good to get it right. Yep. Thank you.
Organizational matters.
I have a couple other thoughts on that. So for streets, Julie was listed under streets. I'm happy to take that spot if no one else is interested. My understanding is that committee has not been meeting regularly. Is that correct?
What?
The streets committee?
It hasn't met recently, no.
No.
Yeah, I'm happy to be plugged in there if we need three. Do we need
I- I-
three council members?
I don't know when we've ever met the last year and a half, have we, Sean?
No, that's only because as the projects have been brought forward, the staff has had some pretty good organization to the matter, I think, and we've all agreed with it. If there's need to meet, that committee can certainly meet. Justin knows that.
And actually, I was thinking about wanting to pull that committee together to start planning for 2023 and out.
And that would be a once a month thing.
Not necessarily. It'd be more as needed.
Well, if you need 3 council members on that committee, I'm happy to take Julie's spot there.
Okay, thank you.
I was also wondering, I guess I'll put 2 things out there. Do we still need a housing task force? And do we need to add the zoning ordinance update subcommittee? I don't know if that's something that would rise to being mentioned on this form or not.
Yeah, we can certainly add the zoning ordinance subcommittee. It'll probably be something that comes off later, but I don't have any problem putting it on there. Well, usually what we try to do is spread out the work. There's, I think 6 committees that meet more often. I won't say exactly monthly, but Arts Culture, Chamber of Commerce. Just moving down the list alphabetically, Parks, Planning, DAFD and Zoning Board of Appeals. And usually we try to get 1 out of the 6 council members on each of those 6 committees. Has been kind of our past practice. This recent round, Jamie, you've got both ZBA and Parks, because Julie was good with just doing Dexter days and being on the other 2 as needed committees. Maybe that's partially because she anticipated that she was going to be resigning soon. I don't know. But usually we would try to spread out 1 council member for each of those more or less 6 major committees. I'm not saying that you need to give up 1 or not, Jamie. I'm just reporting past. That's been kind of the past roles of people, if you will.
Sure,
know.
yeah, I don't mind ZBA. I mean, I think I prefer to stay on Parks. I don't mind ZBA, but if Sanam feels a strong interest in it, I'm happy to have her take my spot.
Sanam, do you have any interest in that committee? Or that,
Yeah.
that board?
Yes.
Jamie, if you're willing to do that and allow her to be in that role, that would be great. I think, appreciate that.
Yeah, that's fine.
That's Parks or something.
No, Jamie would stay on Parks. Is what I
Okay.
heard- is what I heard. Sanam would do
Yeah.
ZBA.
Do what?
ZBA, Zoning Board of Appeals.
CBA, okay, yeah, thank you. Got you down there.
Thanks, Jamie.
Sure thing. One less meeting.
So, then I think all we need then is another utility committee rep. I have 3 names from Justin that have applied for the library board position.
Oh, good.
Andrew Thomas, Rita Holmes, and Martha Gregg are the 3 that I had written down, unless another one has come in.
Nope, as of right now, it's just the 3.
Okay, I've talked with Andrew Thomas before. He was interested in ACH at one time. I have not talked to the other 2 yet. So it was my plan to do that and in time to add a name to this list or add a recommendation to this list. Paul, if you have some input there, I told you early on that I'd be happy to take any input from any of you, really, if you have a good suggestion for this.
Throw me the 3 names, Andrew Thomas, was it Anita Gregg?
It was Martha Gregg
Martha Gregg, okay.
and then Rita Holmes.
Rita Holmes, okay, thank you.
Andrew's over on Cushing Court. Martha's on 5th Street, I think, and
Yeah,
Rita's on Inverness, I believe.
Martha served on ACH for quite some time.
That's right.
Had some experience with committee work, if that makes a difference to anyone. And she
Yeah,
was.
she was on there.
nice to work with. Yeah, nice person to work
Very
with.
good. That was a tough loss for the committee, in my opinion. She did a lot of great work on that committee. She's very dedicated.
Do we have a volunteer to fill the utility committee? Or we could just roll with 2, I suppose.
Yeah.
if it doesn't
I can do
necessarily-
that. Is that also meeting infrequently at this point?
Yeah, as needed, yep.
Yeah, I'm happy to do that.
Okay.
I'll throw my 2 cents in. I feel in my situation, I have to make sure that I'm available when they have their meetings, and for the 5/8, they still meet on Tuesdays at 5:30 till 7. And we have coverage for Pat in our home with that. And then Chamber of Commerce, they meet on on Fridays now. And and that's in the morning. We have coverage for that. The Sidewalk Committee, as I said, we didn't have much activity in that. The Watershed Committee, I have been on not only on the board, but the Executive Committee, and I recently resigned that. So it's really just 4 meetings a year, and that's on the last Thursday of the month. So I can still care of that, and then WAVE, I want to stay on that. I think we have a great new director there, and Julie, and it would be just, she wouldn't have to train anybody else. Okay, so those 4 I still can deal with, and the Sidewalk Committee, I said that so infrequently, so I could go off of that because I didn't know when they were meeting anyway. So, but I could stay on those 4 right there. That was 5H, Chamber of Commerce, Watershed Council, and the WAVE. And somebody else wants to take over one of them, let me know, and I can resign from that. But just let me know what you want, but I can cover those under my present situation with Pat, home situation here, so.
Okay,
That's really only about a year left,
well, we'll put,
anyway.
Jamie's name in for Julie under sidewalk and utilities. And Paul, when Justin gets around to scheduling the street sidewalk alleys meeting, if you can't make it, he can call on somebody else to jump in there if you can, if that's okay with everybody.
Yep.
Okay, well, I think we have some good direction. Justin, do you have the notes taken?
I do.
Okay, is it okay if we move on to council rules?
Yep. Yes.
Okay,
We need to
I
talk
guess
about
yeah, the only thing, one more thing, Jamie, the only thing is on the bottom of the organizational matters, we do have the times of the meetings and the locations.
mhm.
I guess, and Justin is good enough to highlight them there. There is a memo in our packet a little later, the goal being to try and have as many meetings as we can at 35:15, with the alternate being St. Andrews. I don't know if that's how we'd want to list it, or list the alternate site or something. Justin, does that make any sense?
Yeah, we could definitely do that. I talked to David Gasson, and he indicated that, I mean, there's a good chance that we can use 3515 for, at least a little while before construction starts. And then as long as we phase it correctly, potentially through a portion of the construction.
Good.
So, I mean, if that's what council wants to do, shoot to use 3515 as much as possible, and then have St. Andrews as a backup.
And do people want to start the meetings at 7, go back to 7 o'clock, or start merging into that, or do we like it up earlier?
With me.
Say that again, Donna?
I say 7 is fine with me.
Okay,
I agree, Paul.
okay,
Yeah, I'm in favor of that.
okay. So we'll leave that way and just modify the locations then.
I do think, though, that what we did tonight was a great compromise on the situation, not have another meeting for this activity here, and just literally put it in front of this meeting, and what that does, I think, it forces us to get something done in an hour. So, okay.
Yeah, I almost put the meeting first.
No, that would have probably been a disaster. Yeah, good point.
No, I would be happy to reserve the 6 to 7 slot for work sessions, like I think was done in the past, so.
Okay. Okay, good.
I personally am not thrilled with 7 PM because our meetings go way too long. So if we're gonna start at 7, I think we all need to make an effort to be more concise in our comments.
Well, being on the council as many years as I've had, that's never been a requirement for council people, but it should be when they get elected. I agree with you.
Yeah, I think there are other ways we can modify the agenda too, or different parts of it to help expedite the meetings.
All
Which
right,
we
well,
will get into.
that's a good segue into our council
Yeah.
rules then. Everybody has that document as part of the packet as well, I assume?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm not sure where we want to start. Does anybody want to go first? Some of these things, again, we're not taking action on this tonight, so the idea is to put ideas out there if you want to change something and, get feedback. Ultimately, where it's easy to tell that everybody wants to change something, we just have Justin modify it that way where there might be some discussion back and forth. We'll, put some stars by those areas, and then ultimately we have to adopt these at a future meeting.
I had some ideas about the agenda or the order of business.
Okay,
I think I look back
Okay.
at the city of Chelsea's, and this comes, I think it was Joseph Farrell made the recommendation in one of his comments at the end of a meeting about moving like old and new business up in front of staff reports. I think the city of Chelsea might do it that way. I'm curious to know what people would think about moving the business items up in front of staff reports. I don't know if, I think that might be more favorable to the public who is waiting to participate or hear those sections, or what are the pros and cons of that?
No,
I kind of like having it at the front so the people who are there get to see the regular business of the city. Oh, sorry, Don, I didn't see you were there.
no, I just put it up right while you were talking. Go ahead. Go
Um,
ahead, Zach.
But I've been keeping track, and I'm trying to think, the way I like to describe it is playing volleyball on a hot beach in August. I've been keeping track, and sometimes before we get to actual business, after the staff reports, an hour has gone into the meeting. And so if that could be buttoned up, I know it's sometimes a challenge, but I'd like to keep it. But if it gets moved to the back, I wouldn't be upset either.
I also have talked to staff about getting as much into our written reports as possible. And then also the possibility of doing a supplemental written report on the Monday of a council meeting. So that way we're not, giving, 4 or 5 updates a piece. I don't know how council would feel about that.
okay, Donna?
Yeah, I think that having it before, the advantage to that is that whatever is said in that report, you have that material and that information to work with when we're moving on down to actual action items. However, if there's a way to shorten the reporting too, I think that is a good way to move along. So I could do it either way, but at this point, it seems to me like where it is not necessarily the location of the meeting or that portion of the meeting, it's how it's presented. And Justin has addressed that. So that's what I'm thinking.
Okay, Sanam?
Yeah, I really like what Justin suggested, because there are some times that there are portions of the reports that if we have questions on can help with the business items. So if it is at front, but we have the general reports and then the supplemental on Monday, and it's only time for asking questions if we have, especially if it's regarding to the business items, then that can help also shorten the time.
Okay. Good evening, Alex.
Good evening. I'd be in favor of moving the old and new business to the front of the meeting. I think even if it saves people of our citizens 30 minutes, that might help us encourage more participation. I do understand the point about using this information for the business items. I'm trying to think back any discussions that we've had. And I usually feel like before we discuss a business item, we do get that staff report and their opinions. And I usually feel that that's sufficient. And maybe we could shift the information from the reports into that business item. And I think maybe that would be more effective in our time.
Okay, I wasn't keeping track of how obvious it was to keep it or move it, so to speak. Jamie, your hand's back up?
Yeah, I have a general question about questions on staff reports. So I'm kind of torn on this. So early on, I was, apt to ask lots of questions in meetings. Some of the MML trainings I went to basically said, bother staff as little as possible outside of meetings. Chances are, if you have a question, somebody else has a question. I also feel like as a member of the public, if I'm attending a meeting and it seems like there's no interaction between council and staff or even among council themselves, I'm wondering, have they talked about this outside of the meeting, or are they just not thinking about this carefully? Or, why isn't there more conversation about this? So I see it both ways. So anyways, I'm trying to figure out, before our meeting, coming up tonight, I did submit a slew of questions to Justin because I'm going through the packet and I have lots of questions. And so I'm looking for feedback, I guess, on what is more or less efficient? Would staff rather get the same question from 5 council members? Has that ever happened? Am I the only one who has copious amounts of questions? And if so, I'm happy to keep them to myself and do them via email. So yeah, I guess I'm just looking, I understand there are trade-offs there. The trade-off is we all have the same question and we all ask it privately via email and staff has to answer it 5 times. And then nobody knows we all have the same question and the public doesn't get the benefit of seeing that, versus maybe there's only one person who has the question and then it saves the time during the meeting. Is there a clear direction there or no?
Jamie, I just wanted to reiterate that I think one of the things that is healthy about having all of the dialogue in these different areas up front in the meeting is when you have people that join in, they get a full perspective of what's going on, as opposed to if they're just here for one item and, kind of you come in, you do the thing and you leave. I do agree with you that having dialogue between council and staff and seeing that questions, I think that adds to the transparency of things. That being said, I would encourage anybody, if you have a question while you're reviewing the packet, it's always nice to give staff a heads up on the question because they may not necessarily know the answer. And if you ask it ahead of time, you could still bring up that you asked the question if you want to, or if you feel it's important to let people know that you were thinking about something. But if you can get it to them, that gives them a chance to be prepared for the answer too, which I think is always good. Then we all learn the same thing.
Well, and actually to kind of build on that, another option is to provide a written report or written responses to those questions as a report to all of council.
Mm-hmm.
And then, that could get included.
Donna used to do that. Donna used to do that at times.
Okay, and that could get included as a supplement to the packet. When I was in Troy, we used to take questions up until 10 a.m. on packet day, and then compile all of the questions and provide a supplement sheet on the table at council meetings the night of.
Well, and we used to, if you look under I2, the board and commissions reports, you'll notice it says minimum once per year on a prearranged schedule. I want to say that used to sometimes, for some of those, used to be twice a year. We'd have the representative. I remember Pat Cousins coming as a library board representative several times early on as a council member, and we tended to get away from that and leave it up to the board representative to those committees to bring up something if they felt it was important, or that they wanted to make sure we all knew. That's why when I glance over that, I usually will say any updates on any board, speak up. If there's something written in the packet, we bold that that line item or wherever it might be, fire board or, just so you know, there's something in the packet. Donna?
Yeah, I just, putting it on paper, I'm guilty of saying under my breath, I can read. I can read. I already read this when somebody is standing up and I know they're delivering the report and they're enthusiastic, but to me, it's a big chunk of the meeting that, I'm not able to do. So I admit that I'm guilty of that. And I think that writing it down, then if we commit to reading what's presented to us, we should be covered. It should work. Just a little aside. I just wanted to confess, I guess.
No problem.
Thank you. I'm going to sleep really well tonight.
I'm glad that you can read. You did in my class. So.
Yeah, yeah, there you go. That's because you were entertaining us and we never read. You were teaching us every second you got.
Jamie?
Yeah, I like the idea of those written responses being included as a supplement, however that needs to happen. I mean, I know when I have asked questions and ahead of time, I get very detailed responses that I think would be beneficial to other council members, so.
So are we changing or not?
It sounded like there was an even amount of, I don't know if anybody feels passionate about it or not.
I think we should leave it to the manager and let him take a shot at it. And if we don't like it, then we can discuss it further, but he probably has gleaned all the ideas that we've said. So I'm in favor of letting him take a chance as to what he thinks is best.
And then just leaving the order as it is right now.
Yeah, yeah. And then if we
Okay.
want to change it, we can change them anytime we want to change those rules. We can do that. So.
And if that's the route we're going, I would encourage council to send questions, over the weekend or Monday morning before the meeting.
Mm-hmm.
I do see it that on page 7, as it ends, it says city manager assistant to the city manager report and mayor written report, but it doesn't say anything about the council's reporting. So maybe we should add a 6th one there to.
Yep, that we changed that after the last time this was adopted, so that needs to be added in. You're right, Paul.
Okay.
Jamie?
Yep, I think to that point about the council member report, I don't know if this is if it shows up later on in the rules, but my understanding is even before my time, there was some conversation about the purpose of council member reports and what goes in them. And I had a little bit ago, and then I guess it belatedly got sent to you guys this afternoon, reviewed some other nearby council rules, and I looked at Ann Arbor's and there was a whole lot in there. A lot of it that is not relevant to us. For example, as best as I can tell, when there's public participation, people have to sign up in advance. And then I think there's only so many people allowed, like 10 people, and they're drawn at random. So obviously they're dealing with different issues over there. So some things are not relevant here. But I pulled out, and I don't know if people had a chance to look at it, I pulled out some things that I thought were relevant, not necessarily verbatim to pull into ours, but it seemed like there were issues or topics that had come up in the past. And so related to the communications from council, they say this place on the agenda is reserved for council members to make announcements, request reports, and speak on subjects which they deem important, report out on committees, and give notice of future proposed business. They stipulate a time limit of 2 minutes, once at the beginning and 2 minutes once at the end. So I don't know if this adds any clarity to that conversation, which again started before my time, on what is the point or what is the purpose or what could be included in a council member report that appears at that part of the agenda. And if it does help elucidate that, we could perhaps pull some of that text somewhere where it would be relevant.
Well, and I'm not sure, I know that on the draft agenda there, it says mayor written report, but I've almost always said something every time under that. It might just be that, I don't have anything to add to my written report, but I don't know if the word written needs to be there. It's implied that I'm giving a report. It doesn't have to be written, I don't think. I don't know if anybody feels that same way or cares if
Be
that
the-
word were taken out.
Would it be the same way with council report? To say
Yeah,
that?
I don't think they necessarily have to be written. The council thing has always been, I mean, historically, council comments were under item M. They were later, and then we added a spot so that there could be something submitted in the packet officially, but it does, there's nothing in the rules as it says now that, I guess what I'm trying to say is, it's not like it's only written or oral, it's either or, right? I mean, it covers everything, right? It's not specifically just to be written. Zach, thanks for waiting.
Yep. Can I throw my big wad of spaghetti at the wall, or are we doing more directed discussion?
As long as it doesn't have a story to go with it.
Okay,
Keep
I'll
it
do my
concise.
best then.
Keep it concise.
As I'm looking through, a lot of these paragraphs seem very wordy, and so I was naturally trying to my editing thing get in there. So for by way of example, the city manager and or other responsible administrative officer or employee at the city office, city manager or designee. I mean, I know it's a little persnickety thing, but if this is more readable, it's more understandable for folks. I'm going to throw this meatball out there for the agenda. I have had things that I submitted at the deadline that were not included on the agenda, and not like that. It made me very upset. I think we are all equals on the council. We don't have a strong mayor system here, so if council member wants to get something put on the agenda that goes out, that ought to happen, or have 2 members of council sign on it or whatever. If the majority of council doesn't want to debate it, it gets yanked when we vote on the agenda. Let's see, we ought to have, as part of approval of the minutes, I know it's done just kind of by process now, but a D that is, or before the approval of the agenda, the conflict of interest disclosure or discussion. Where are we? Sorry, I'm jumping quite a bit through here. Under consent agenda J, I think the discussion of budget and financial matters, we have a pretty good financial crew, so it probably should go there instead of just on the mayor's report. Old business should be unfinished business. That's persnickety Robert's Rules of Order. Let's see, public access to meeting records. I think we can just say that we follow the Michigan stuff that says it has to be in eight business days that they're a public record. Again, just a bit wordy there. I'd like, I was in the email that came out lately of having the voting random with all members. That's what they do in Dexter Township. And again, we have a weak mayor, not a strong mayor who has veto power or any of that stuff. Sorry, I'm running through here pretty quickly. The filling vacancy on council, I believe it was the process that the Dexter School Board used. I really like that, where everyone can put out 1 or 2 names and then it gets voted down. Because if you look at our charter, it's council shall appoint, and I think having all of council select is more true to that purpose. And that's it.
Okay, so Justin, or not Justin, Zach, to the point of the vacancy part, is that written out somewhere?
Someone did research with what the Dexter School Board did, I believe.
Yeah, I saw an email from a past school board member that described it, but I guess what I'm asking is, if we're gonna look at it, in fairness, we should see it written out somewhere so we can read it, understand it, think about it, debate it, whatever.
Yep. That seems reasonable.
Can I ask you to track that down?
I will give it a try.
If you, or do you want me to, or do you want staff to try and do it? We can, I didn't mean to put it on you. I was just thinking, since you brought it up tonight, I'm happy to go either way.
School board members that I had personal contact with are no longer school board members. So probably best.
I think I have access to it.
Okay, Justin, if you could get it, thanks. I wasn't trying to put it on Zach. I just was giving him an opportunity. Okay. Donna?
Yeah, I served as clerk before I learned how to be a council rep. And the idea of us setting the agenda without knowing all the other components of what's going on in the city that might need to be dealt with. I don't think I'm capable of setting the agenda, nor do I think I should be able to decide when it is to my advantage. So I'm not in favor of doing anything that's going to give council members the opportunity to set the pace. We have a staff that's very efficient. When something comes up, they give us a detailed report. I'm not in favor of us calling that shot, quite frankly. That's all.
Okay, Jamie, next.
Yep, thanks. Yeah, I think I agree with everything that Zach had proposed. I was going to suggest pulling the conflict of interest declaration to a separate item like it is for the ZBA, just to make sure that we don't miss it, because I think that's happened a couple of times. In terms of the submission to the agenda, I mean, I guess it could happen either one of two ways. It could be accepted when it's submitted on time, or I think right now rules allow during the approval of the agenda, somebody can propose adding something and then it can be voted on at that time. So it can either be added in advance in the packet and then voted down, or it could be not in the packet and proposed sort of last minute during approval of the agenda and then approved or not approved. So I feel like in effect, they're the same, but in one situation, the other council members don't have a chance to review what might have been in the packet.
Exactly.
Right, the goal, the goal of this is twofold. One is so that staff has enough time when an agenda item is proposed to make sure they get it on the agenda and get it in the proper place. The second is the reason the mayor is there, or used to say village president, is a courtesy. Okay, so that since we're presiding over the meeting, we know, or I know, in this case, what is being called upon, so that I'm not surprised. There's sometimes when topics are introduced, I will ask staff to add additional information on it if I have background on it or something that I feel might be important to be part of the item. So the 5 o'clock deadline has never been meant to be a punitive thing. It's a guideline so that staff has at least some full days to put it together. I mean, in most cases, when the packet goes out on Wednesday, if this came in at 5, staff isn't going to be able to do anything with it other than on Tuesday. So, but if you're going to have an item, all it takes is a simple note to Justin or Justin and I, and in this case, to say, hey, I've got an item coming up, and then it gets reserved. The deadline doesn't, we've allowed the written thing to be submitted the following day or later, if I recall, Justin. I know certainly we did that with Courtney and Donna as well. So I don't want anybody to think of the 5 p.m. as as a punitive thing. It's meant to just be a way of defining when stuff gets on the agenda or not.
And it is also helpful when a council member is requesting something that that they've provided the information as well in like a memo or a format like that.
Yeah, I guess so. I feel like I disagree, like, or maybe I was misunderstood. I'm in agreement with Zach, that I think if a council member has prepared all of that and submits it by 5, then my default is that it would go in the packet. And if
Yeah.
all of council deems it to be like ridiculous or something like that, they would see it during approval of the agenda and be able to vote it down. I'd
Right.
rather be in that position where I've seen all the materials and then I can make a decision if I want to talk about it, than to have somebody propose it verbally at the meeting and not really have context for it. So,
Yeah, and in the same way, Jamie, if it goes on there as a consideration item and council only wants to discuss it, all they have to do is change the item if they want.
yeah,
We used to default the opposite way and put it on, if it was the first time we've seen it, it would go on as a discussion item, just out of courtesy to let people talk about it and then advance. But you're right, there's more than one way to handle it. And we've been mostly putting things on as consideration if they've been requested. It's up to council to decide whether it's in a hurry or not in a hurry. You know what I mean?
gotcha. Thank you.
Yep, you're welcome. Sanam?
Yeah, it could also be helpful that if a council member is requesting an agenda item, to also talk about the urgency of it, because I understand what Donna says, that at times might have very urgent city matters that need to be on the agenda for discussion, and something that one of us is submitting can actually wait until the next time. So it would be good to communicate that with Justin, and making sure that there is, we give priority to the urgent matters of the city.
What?
Thanks. Can I ask why we switched from defaulting from the other way? Because in my mind, the old way makes more sense.
Well, I think it makes more sense for something that hasn't been brought up to before to be a discussion item also. But we didn't specify that in the rules. And Zach pointed that out to me when he requested to have a couple consideration items, or maybe it wasn't just Zach. Could have been Jim Smith in the past. For a while there was a lot of activity in the last hour of the day before 5 o'clock. For quite a while, there was a lot of things that were getting submitted right at the end. And for that reason, I was in favor of them being discussion first, since, they came up at that time. But Zach pointed out that we didn't specifically say that the item had to be a discussion item. So, as Jamie said, if something's on there as a consent and you're not ready to vote on it, all you have to do is say, I don't think this should be a consideration item at this time. And if 3 other people agree, it could be changed, or in that case. But I prefer the default of discussion anyway.
Yeah, I guess that doesn't really, to me, that doesn't solve the problem. If we're all supposed to be equal as council members, having any one of us have the ability to put something up for a vote without us having a chance to discuss it if it's a new idea, and then putting it on somebody who might be uncomfortable saying, hey, I'm not comfortable with that. I would definitely be more comfortable if new items were discussion items before they were consideration items. So we all had a fair chance to have an actual discussion.
Okay. Just as watching the time here, it is 7:01. Does council want to keep going for a little bit on this? Or do we want to come back next meeting with the workshop in front of the next meeting again to continue? We could have Justin update this a little bit with some red lines on the comments that have been made, so we know kind of where people are proposing changes or considering changes. Just thoughts on time?
I would prefer that we start the regular council meeting and then use our time the next time to clarify the red
Continue.
lines or any other questions that council members may have, or anything else that they want to talk about there.
Okay.
Donna,
Okay.
you recall?
All right. Zach, you had your hand up, so I'm gonna let you go, sir.
Oh, I was just gonna say that this if we had Robert's Rules of Training, I think folks would be more comfortable. Robert's Rules of Order doesn't actually differentiate between action and discussion. Everything is intended toward action, towards doing something. So if we meet to just discuss, we're just kind of going around in circles. So it's very common in the process. You have something on there, folks aren't comfortable with it, you postpone it.
Mhm.
That allows you to come back, get more information and look at it again later. So I'm going to throw out again, I think there'd be value in all of us getting more comfortable. And I think would allow us as a body and city to be more efficient in our activities. So
Okay, thank you. All right, so Justin, we'll schedule another continuation workshop then. I don't suppose there's any harm in putting the organizational matters in front of council at the next meeting, since I think we can take that one to we might as well get that on the agenda for approval, Justin. But we'll continue the policy part. What would that be on the 23rd?
Mhm.
Okay, I'll let everybody have 2 minutes to use the restroom, and we'll come back and try and start the meeting at 7:05.
All right, thank you.